Originally released in December of 2016, X Plus's 25cm Shin Godzilla was the company's first outing with this character. So, 6 years later, how does it hold up? With time, unfortunately, this figure has been overshadowed by the remarkable Yuji Sakai 30cm series Shin Godzilla. Now, of course, that figure is considered one of the best sculpts of the character. And while this figure's sculpt is not necessarily as good as the Sakai, I do think that there are some elements of it that this figure does better than the actual 30cm Sakai release. Now, that's not to say the Sakai is necessarily a better figure or that this is a worse figure. I do think that each holds its own and each figure kind of offers a different experience. Having both of them, I really love both. Now, of course, while the Sakai does have the deeper, more screen-accurate sculpt, the sculpt on this figure itself is actually really nice. Though a bit softer than the Sakai, under this light here you can really see where the sculpt comes out. You have some nice detail that goes throughout the entire body, much like how it is in the film itself. I think the chest in particular really perfectly encapsulates that sort of jagged scarring that's present on Shin Godzilla, and the gills also look very nice as well. The open mouth head sculpt is great too. The individually sculpted teeth look excellent, and the split jaw look really makes it look like this figure is roaring. Since this is the Rick version, the alternate head for this figure is the closed mouth, which is also on the standard version of this figure, just in the more red and black traditional color. Whether you have the standard version or the Rick version, either head sculpt looks excellent on what I think is the best part of this figure, which is its amazing silhouette. Let's take a moment to appreciate how good this figure looks with that tail swooping behind it. X Plus masterfully captured how the tail almost has a life of its own, just like in the film itself, and how it's always kind of swinging right behind Shin Godzilla and always moving around. The tail, in conjunction with this Rick open mouth head sculpt, I think adds such a level of movement to this figure. It really gives off the idea that Shin Godzilla is sort of turning, especially since the head is slightly off-center. Now, for all the praises I have regarding the sculpt of this figure, I do think unfortunately the thing that holds this back is the paint job. Now, I can only speak to the Rick version of this figure, I cannot speak to the standard version's paint job, but in terms of this figure's paint job, especially in the dorsal section, where that purple is, it does feel very flat, and because of that, it feels more like a toy than it does a realistic statue. I also think the teeth suffer a bit from maybe too bright of a paint job. I don't know, they feel a little bit too highlighted in comparison to the rest of the face, so they kind of just pop out at you. And both the red and purple paint, specifically in the torso section, not the tail, I think the tail is actually quite nicely done, but in the torso section I think those two colors are too flat. Because of that flat paint application, it does kind of create a very muted appearance for the majority of the figure, unfortunately. Now, I have seen people do repaints quite often actually of this figure, and those repaints really bring out details here that I think are somewhat hidden by this lackluster paint job. But honestly, aside from that, having had this figure for years, it's never really been anything that's held it back for me. I think the sculpt overall is just impressive enough to get me past that paint, and the tail pose is just excellent. The overall silhouette is so impressive and just really captures that sort of very swooping tail that's present in the film itself, and just the overall look of Shin Godzilla. Overall, I think this is a very sincere first attempt from X Plus with this character. Of course, with hindsight, it's hard not to compare this figure with the Sakai release, but I do think that regardless of that figure, this one still holds its own. It has a great sculpt, a great pose, and I really love the fact that the Rick version has the interchangeable heads. I think that adds some nice variation to the figure, depending on how you want to display it. If you're a hardcore Shin Godzilla fan, or X Plus collector, or just sort of any Godzilla collector in general, I think this is a great figure to have in any collection. So, what do you guys think about this figure? Do you own the standard or the Rick? Which one do you prefer? Anyway, I'll be following up this video with the 25cm frozen version of Shin Godzilla. That's definitely an underrated figure that I think doesn't get a lot of attention, but I can't wait to talk about that one soon, so keep an eye out for that one. Anyway, if you're new to the channel and you like the content, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and taking a look at my other videos on the channel as well. You can also follow me on Instagram at Total Approximation, where I post Godzilla toy photography each week. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.